Just 10:30. We've gone live on the new system, and just checking so everyone's in the room. So just to say that we do have a full quorum in the room, so we can make a start. Welcome to the meeting. We've had a karakia already. And just to say as well, because if there's an event like an earthquake, drop and cover, and and exit out through the door, and the gathering point's actually out on the car park, out of the car park. So we haven't done that before, but it sort of feels like we should. So we're being recorded. We've got a new system in place, but we're actually not live streaming today. That happens next week. But we have all the systems in place today to be, going out in the audio and to have the recordings done. The cameras are all round, and so this is quite exciting that we're sort of very close now to being sort of fully live and accessible by the public. So, Yayan, would you like to do the mihi? Kia ora.
Tēnā te rūru, te kaukau mai nei, ki hai mā hiti, ki hai mā raka tūpoka nui o te rūru, te rekau. He po, he ao, kāwa, tia, ti hei wā, mauri ora. Nei ana te mihi kia o koutou. Tuatahi, mihi ki te rukarawa, nōna te tīmataka, nōna na whakamutunga, kaori inoi ana hoki, nāna tata katoa, manaki tiaki ka wā katoa. Ka huri ai kia rātou, koe ki te pō, ko takahietara whānui a tāne, tēnei wiki, tēnei marama, tēnei tau. Kaori mātou e wari tia ai o koutou, moi mai rā, oki mai, tiraha, whakatā. Rātou kia rātou, tātou kia tātou, nō reira, tēnā koutou, nei te mihi atu ki ngā manuhiri tai mai, i tēnei wā, kia koe Jessica, Shelley, nau mai, hoki mai, i Wanganui tātou, ki te kōrero e pāna Y Connection Waitaha, nō reira tēnā kōrua. Koutou, ngā kai kauni hera, pai ki kite i o koutou tēnei wā, kia koe John te raha ruhi, nō reira tei, nei te mihi atu ki a koe he hoa, pai ki kite a koe, hoki mai i Wanganui i tātou, hikaka te manawa, kei ko nei koe, he noho i Wanganui, nō reira tēnā koe, hoki ki a koe, Peter, kia kaha e hoa, i hoki mai koe, i tēnei wā, nā reira, kei ko nei mātou, tiaki manaki i a koe, tēnei wā, nō reira mihi atu ki a koe, tū maia, tū kaha, hoki mai koe, nō reira tēnā koe, koutou katoa, huri noa, tēnā tātou katoa. I tēnei wā, kei te noho mātou, kei mua e nei tepu hou, tepu rimu, no te tai pautini, he a tāhua hoki tēnei tepu, e nei rākau, mai i ngā wā o mua, engari kei te ora tonu, hinai nei, kei mua i a tātou, te Mauri o era rākau rimurapa. Hoki ngā whakāhua, mai auraki, ki uta, tai atu ki tai, ki te tātahi, engari kua kite ngā awa o ngā kā Pākihi whakateka o Waitaha, he a tāhua. Just acknowledging our guests, Shelley and Jessica, welcome back to amongst us. Also acknowledging John the Lazarus, coming back to us, and I'm so glad you're here, John. This whare wouldn't be itself without you. So I'm glad you're finding, in this challenging time that you're amongst us, and also acknowledging you, Peter, to see you here amongst us, to show your strength of character, to show who you are. We're here for you. So thank you for being here, and tēnā kia kaha. Just acknowledging these beautiful tepu, this rimu from the west coast, dug up, I think, from the river, so it's been recycled rimu, and also acknowledging our Canterbury region from Aoraki on that table there, showing the beautiful awa, our braided rivers flowing across our plains all the way down to our coast. So just acknowledging that, and just because I know I noticed some braids are together and there's one braid by itself because we always have that outlier braid somewhere in our Canterbury River. So I'm not too sure which councillor that is, but no doubt through the decisions that we made at this table, we will find out who that is. Without further ado, I'm just going to do a karakia. Just to acknowledge that this table is going to be here for a while. We're only the caretakers of the sitting here, because the faces will change over the years to come. But decisions will be made not for all of Waitaha. So we just got to put the mauri in this table that hopefully we always make the right decision, eh? Nā reira, ka tākana te karakia mo tēnei whare, mo tēnei tepu, mo te tepu rimu hoki. Oh, now I've got to, I've said all that, now I've got to take the mauri. Mai te tupua, mai te tawhito, mai te kāhui karaki, mai te kāhui araki, tēnei te purima mai te taipautini. Kia kaha kia mai ai a mātou i noho ana kei mua, ia tēnei te puta Māori mo ngā whakaaro o ngā tangata i noho ana kei mua, ia koe te Māori kei roa tēnei tupu, te Māori, mo ngā whakaaro, mo ngā tangata ke eke mai nei, tēnei tau, ngā tau e heke mai nei. Kia mau ki ita, kia kore kai karo, kia pupui, kia whakawhamaua, kia tīna. O mie, hui e, tā iki e. Kia ora.
Kia ora, and thanks, Jan. So, moving on to apologies, we've had an apology from Councillor East, who's on council business at a zone committee meeting. Conflicts of interest, do we have any today? Nothing to declare. We have one public forum session, so I'd like to welcome Jessica Halsey, who's the Y Connection Regional Manager, and Shelley McMurtry from EOS Ecology to the table to present to us on the Y Connection project and particularly focus on the catchment map series. Lovely. So you settle yourselves, and then we've got a presentation online, but there's also copies available in hard copy if councillors would like them. You have 10 minutes to speak, and we'll give you a little notice, a little bell. Do we have? Is it a bell today, or what are we using? Or just a little signal that it's when you're at 9 minutes.
Yeah, I'll give you a little signal.
And so we'll hear from you for 10 minutes, and then councillors could ask questions after that. So thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate it. Look forward to hearing from you. Kia ora. Oh, just.
Kia ora, ko Jess toko ingoa. I wanted to express my gratitude to yourselves for inviting us back again, and for the opportunity to share with you the Y Connection report and the mahi we've been doing over the last year and a little bit longer. I believe I came and presented to yourselves back in June, and a lot has been happening in that time, and it has been both difficult and fantastic, and we've really appreciated the opportunity to get to do what we've been able to do. I wanted to direct thanks to Councillor Grant. Thank you for wanting to bring forward the Focus Catchment Map series and having an opportunity for councillors to see it. The feedback we've had from the community groups we've been working with has been fantastic, so we're really excited for the opportunity to delve into that a bit more. Can you do the next slide? I'm not going to utilise this time to delve into what we've been doing over the last year. The reason I wanted to send you the report is so you can have time to digest it yourself, and I really would love the opportunity to have further conversations with each of you about the work we're doing in each of your regions, each of your areas. And as you can see from the display up at the top, these were the 15 areas, groups that we looked to support, but we are now supporting a total of 71 catchment groups, both through individual and hands-on support and also through the support for collectives. What I'd like to do now is pass you on to Shelly McMurtry to have the opportunity to talk to you about the Focus Catchment Map series, how it's currently being used in Waitaha, and how we hope it will continue to be used in the region. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou, ko Shelly McMurtry. As just said, I'm here to give you a quick update on the delivery of the Focus Catchment Map series into Waitaha, Canterbury. Some of you would have heard about the map series already. Some of you actually worked with us during the development phase, and some of you would have seen some of the outputs that we've produced for Canterbury already. The MAP series is one of the key outputs for EOS as the National Technical Support Team for the Y Connection project. In relation to Canterbury, we're hoping to produce 15 of these for Y Connection supporter groups by June 2025. And with the systems that we have set up, we would be able to continue to produce these for other catchments if there is interest and support for such an endeavour. The intent of the MAP series is to bring together data available from a myriad of online sources into one place. All the information that we present is ultimately available online, but it would be a Herculean effort for each group to have to search for and collate all of this information on their own, let alone, doing that in their spare time. And that's why we decided that it was worthwhile to produce this output for them. The document is pretty sturdy. It's got over 90 pages and 30 maps in an A3 output, and its current format is in PDF and a bound print. The MAP series is based on a Kia Te Katai approach on providing knowledge at that catchment level. And we all know that being able to work through options for improving the health of our waterways, that really needs to be done at the scale of a catchment rather than the site. And this MAP series certainly reinforces that approach. The MAP series is broken down into 6 sections that takes you on a journey through the catchment. It starts at the broader parent catchment view, and this is because sometimes the focus catchment could actually be just part of a much larger catchment. It then goes through factors affecting catchment processes and land management aspects. These are based on model data available at the national level. We then move into monitoring and ecological data, and that's taken from data collected by Regional Council for Water Quality and Invertebrates and national data sets for fish. And it ends with how your catchment is connected to the coast. During the development phase, we had permission from MFE to work with one representative catchment group, that was the Hakataramia Sustainability Collective, and with the Regional Council, and that was you guys. That collaboration allowed us to produce something that was not only useful to the groups, but which wouldn't conflict with the work being done by regional councils in the same space, and that includes things like the catchment context challenges and values process. Whilst there was a little bit of nervousness from both parties at the start, the collaborative process did work really well, and I think that everyone was ultimately pleased at the output that we were able to achieve. During that development, we did look at over 150 different online data sources, and we ended up focusing on those available at either that national or the regional level. And we did that because we were rolling these out across the country, so we really did need to do this in an efficient and consistent manner. And having the same type of data presented across the country also meant that groups in one part of the country could directly share and compare their map series with a group in another part of the country. With such a massive body of data to bring together, we did need to look at ways of working smarter. We rely heavily on GIS and FME processes to pull together data from a range of different sources. For most of those national databases, we can pull that data directly from the websites, and that includes things like the RecLayer and the LCDB. Other data sources, such as LAWA, those aren't really accessible via this kind of automated access, and so we're sent Excel files which we then input into that FME workbench. And so with those kinds of data sets, we can work up these workbenches to effectively run unchanged as we produce that map series across the country. There are then some regionally specific GIS processes to pull data direct from each regional council, and that process does differ per region based on the systems and processes of the council. And I do have to say that working with the ECAN team on this has been an absolute dream. They've been really supportive of sharing the monitoring data that you have, and a lot of that data is also available via the fantastic Canterbury Maps interface. So that process is working pretty seamlessly now for Canterbury. During the production of the map series, we have a few touch points with our engagement team here in Canterbury, as well as with the other provider organisations across the country who work directly with the catchment groups. This includes online GIS tools to assist us and them, and that's available through a provider portal, which is a login area of the Y Connection website. And of course, our team is here in Canterbury, so Jess and the team can just pop over and have a chat to us. But having these online documented processes is pretty important to show what we did and when. The production of the map series is also only part of that process. The support of the engagement team is also a key part of making sure that the map series is more than just a coffee table book for the catchment groups. And the process that we run through includes our science team doing a deep dive workshop with Jess's engagement team here, and to help them understand it a little bit more, and where we can point out some of the key things that we've seen when reading the document. Then our science team and Jess's engagement team, we run a joint focus catchment map series with the catchment group and take them through that as well. The overall process is tracked online via the progress dashboard, where everyone can keep updated on the project. To date, we've completed 5 focus catchment map series in Canterbury. There's another 4 in the pipeline or in progress, and another 6 yet to come. We do have some hard copy printouts here for one of them. This is the Akaroa Harbour focus catchment map series, and I can leave those here for anyone who'd like to have a look at the hard copy. To date, the feedback on the map series in Canterbury has been really positive. There are some here today that can probably share their own positive thoughts on the map series, but what I've put up on the slide here is how the supported catchment groups have been using their focus catchment map series to date. So this relates to the 5 groups that have their map series in hand. And you can see that a lot of the use that they've got out of the map series is to either gain a better overall view of their catchment, help them target data gaps, and that could be through a lack of visibility of other data that they know about, or looking to set up their own monitoring to help fill those data gaps, as well as to help see things that they can celebrate. And this was a really interesting thing for us, as some of the groups out there are really struggling with the negative aspects. And so seeing things in the map series that they can celebrate and get behind has been a real boon for them. So, wow, look at that. I have managed to whip through all of those slides in the allotted time that we have. So, I will stop talking now, and if there's time for questions, we're happy to answer them.
Great, thank you very much. You actually have 1 minute left. That was 9 minutes precisely. Like I said, there's been a minute extra for questions. So, councillors, can I ask, Councillor Davies, to your hand first.
Thank you. What measures do you have in place that ensures the reliability of the automated data collection process?
Yeah, we do have quite a detailed quality assurance process that we go through. So whilst we've set up the automated processes, the GIS team, the science team and the design team that put the document together, they all have a series of QA sections that they need to work through. So that allows us to check the data, how the data has been pulled down, how it's presented, and those key touch points to make sure that what is being shown is actually reflecting what's in the data. That does mean that when we push the documents out, that the time that it takes to produce those documents, we do extend that time frame out to allow for those really important checks and balances.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Thanks, Vicky. I'm interested in who you're working with, and it seems to be a fairly random selection of catchment groups at the moment. Are you working with the likes of the catchment collectives, and then they're funneling you on to specific catchment groups, or the specific catchment groups coming to you as individuals, and then you're working with them?
So when we began the process back in June, first coming to presenting, I actually did a lot of work going up and down Waitaha, engaging with the water zone committees, talking to, for example, Angela Cushney at the Mid Canterbury Catchment Collective, and trying to get a gauge of where was the best place for us to be working. And then we hosted the regional hui back in September, where we invited a representative from Mid Canterbury Catchment Collective, what was then the South Canterbury Collective, and apologies, their new name has fallen from my brain, and the Huranui Landcare group as well. They all came to the hui, as well as other people who were working to support catchment groups up and down the country. And the key thing we did through that was not just looking at what we could do, what gaps we could go and fill in, and who we could support, but everyone else in the room, where their strengths were and what they could be doing as well. This then led to what was called our RNA and our tailored package of support, which we worked with representatives from MPI, New Zealand Landcare Trust, and ECAN, which was then deciding which groups it would be best for us to then go in and support. So that was the process that kind of took us down to who we were going to be supporting. So when you see those maps that were on there, they link within those 15 catchments, those who we listed as the catchment groups we were going to be supporting. But alongside all of those, we are working continually with each of those catchment collectives. Less so with the Huranui. They're incredibly busy and doing so much work in that space. But we work quite closely with Angela Cushney and I'm going to say this one, the Hikio Hines Hill Country Catchment Group. And we work well with I wish I could remember the name, the South Canterbury group, with work we're doing with Te Moana and a group that's not listed on there, which is Barker's Creek. So yes, we are working very closely with the collective.
Cool. So there's a whole coordinated approach here going on, which is cool.
So Councillor Edge.
Thanks, Jessica and Shelley. It's an impressive piece of work over such a short time to bring that data together, and for me, it's really an important process in terms of looking at that catchment-based analysis, because they're different right across Canterbury from one end to the other, east to west, and in a way, what you're doing here is going to fit in, I think, quite nicely with our RPS and the idea of freshwater management units, and within those freshwater management units there are multiple sub-catchments with catchment groups. My question is, and we're looking forward to the Kaikoura one, the Zone Committee is obviously working on that now. My question is related to the next step. So you've got the biophysical data, geophysical sort of data, and is the analysis process, and what you said in that last slide was it's a starting point for more detailed analysis of wider data sets. Would they likely include things like the Agribase data set, where land use activity can be looked at within the catchments and provide information that correlates with what you've got, the main geophysical, but also the science data that Environment Canterbury has? Is that the next step?
Look, it's a really interesting question. I think what you've touched on is what we're finding with the map series is that, we're producing these and we're having the korero with the catchment groups, and this provides them with a really strong baseline and a starting point. And then we're being careful that we're not telling them what to do, right? This is about providing all the information that's available for their catchment and then working together on how that can be interpreted and what it could mean for the area, and then helping them to work out, well, what's the next thing to focus on. And so as a result of that korero, we are finding some interest coming out in the groups for what's the next extension for the map series. And actually we're also having some internal korero here at ECAN as well about what some of the additional map series extensions could be that provide some additional detail into the catchment areas, into the sub-catchments within each of the map series, and some advice and support on how, depending on what the map series is sort of showing is going on, how what could be done to sort of improve the situation. So, trying to increase the network of support that exists for the groups. So, we certainly see this as a starting point, and helping, because a lot of this is about information and just being aware of what's out there and putting the pieces together, I think, for the groups as well. You know, having all of this information in one place has really allowed for some aha moments. And to be honest, from a science point of view, I've had a hell of a lot of aha moments as well when I've looked at all of this information kind of layered together. And so if we can then, you know, use that as allowing for that next step to be more focused on what groups want and support them in that and provide this consistent level of information so that it helps for their knowledge gain as well.
Thank you. Councillor Korako.
Tēnā kōrua, Jessica, Shelley. Hey, thank you for the presentation. I just want to ask the question around the engagement with mana whenua, because I see that just going through your annual report stuff, and then with this, and then there's one runanga actually that's mentioned there, which is Onuku, and you know, congratulations on the on that hui that you ran actually in January at Onuku as well. I'm just thinking that and looking, you know, of the sort of areas that you've covered, Kaikoura, which also you got Waimakariri, so the two of them, Te Runanga o Kaikoura, and Naituahuriri, and then also, you know, looking on Te Pātako o Rākaihautū. Now, I know you've got a very active relationship with Onuku. And I see that Wairewa Mahinga Kai is also, I'm just wondering around Kokorarata, Rapaki, those ones. The other part, so that's the first one, just acknowledging those papatipu that are probably not quite on your radar, or you may have actually tried to engage with them. The other parts are the Runanga environmental entities, like Mahanui Kurutaio, AES and Okaha. And the final one, which is Ngaitahu centric, and you probably know about Kahuru Manu, which is the mapping, you know, it's very much the cultural mapping program that's been around for quite some time, which would be really interesting, you know, to actually lock into this. So my question is that are you continuing to develop the relationships with mana whenua across the areas that you work in?
A brilliant question, and it was one that we were looking at from day one. I don't know if you remember, I had a meeting with Yayan and Craig, and had some fantastic recommendations from them both as to good steps and things that I could be taking to engage best with mana whenua. And from day one, we have reached out and we've kept regular comms, and feedback we've had from some entities is we're just too busy at the moment to take this on, but we've gone, that's not a problem, I'm going to keep sharing comms with those as we work. And yes, with Onuku, we've had brilliant relationships with them. It's been fantastic to get to work alongside their beyond brilliant plan they've got for the harbour, and yes, with Wairua as well. We also work closely with Arawhenua, with the group, with the work we do with Ahuriri Catchment Collective Group. We were invited to the hungi that happened recently down there, which was great fun to be with, and Waihau being the other group that's listed on there, although they've not been able to engage with us actively because they've got a lot of internal work that they're doing currently at the moment. We've kept them on there and we've kept the comms up with them, and we've just, the door is open. We don't want to inundate with information, but we do share progress as we've been going along.
Just one last point, and you know, the Focus Catchment Group mapping series would be, I think, a catalyst actually to re-engage, you know, and because that is really, just looking at that work, is really, I think, part of, you know, what would really get them to engage. So, kia ora. Thank you. Thanks for your work.
Thank you. So, Councillor Mackay.
Through you, Chair. Thank you very much, Jessica and Shelley, for coming and revisiting us, particularly Jessica, because you know that I was one of these people that was really confused about what role you could play when you first came to visit us. Look, I'm absolutely impressed with the map series and have told you that. Anyway, but I just thinking about your next steps, and I understand you've got funding until June 25. Is there conversations going on for continuing funding from probably both MPI and MFE or any other agencies? Because I think that's quite important to carry on building on what you've actually done, because it's very impressive, particularly the map series.
Thank you so much. It's great to have that feedback. It has been conversations we have been having continually, both mostly with MPI, with other entities as well, to look if there's opportunities for the Focus Catchment Map series and the support we've been able to give within the region to continue. So it is very high on our list. We've have regular meetings as to what funding options we're going to be looking for next. But we're also wanting to kind of analyse the work that we've done to date to when we're looking for funding for us to be able to continue. So we're really highlighting where the benefit has been, what we've actually been able to do. Because it's one thing to say, oh, we've been doing a really great job, you should fund us. What we want to be able to do and what we've got a good track record is show the data and the feedback and actually what has been going well, what are the key things that we can do, and what are the key gaps that we can continue to fill. So yeah, it is very high on our list. Hopefully we get to stay around forever.
And look, if I can just add to that as well, and I'm going to be really honest here because I think you've raised a really good point. You know, there's a lot of good mahi going in through to end of June and June 2025, and the concern is what happens after that, not only because the groups are getting supported and there is, you know, a huge amount of effort that's gone into this work, and so continuing that on is, you know, costs less, is more efficient than picking something up, putting it down, picking it up. It has been challenging, obviously, with the wider things that have been going on, you know, in Aotearoa, New Zealand, in terms of trying to have those conversations. And so I would put it out there that any support, even if it's just support from the point of view that you are supportive of the work that's being done, if we can have that sort of in writing, then that's going to be really useful to put that back to MFE, MPI and so forth, and try and get that korero going and getting support beyond June 2025. So thank you.
So Councillor Swiggs.
I'm not going to. Councillor Mackay has channeled my question. Was actually about the delivery part, because there's a lot of like what you've done, but I was quite interested to understand how that's translated to impact on the ground. I don't think that's a question that you need to answer now, but I think that would be really good in that conversation that you just sort of had. Because what is the impact that you're delivering to, you know, the outcomes, especially that we're trying to see and other people are trying to see. But I was really pleased to see the Community Waterways Partnership piece that you're working on. We've had lots of conversations around this table and in the community about the you know, urban waterways. So if there's anything you can do to sort of get that really pumping and get it actually off the ground into some sort of formal way, that would be a big win for our urban waterways.
I just wanted to add to what you just said about the Community Waterway Partnership. I was just listening to Courtney having a meeting today. Courtney's our Mid Canterbury Catchment Mid Canterbury coordinator, and she was having a workshop with Georgina today and helping them plan and prepare for the hui that's coming up. And we've just gone on some facilitation training, so we're looking to continue to support Georgina in that space. And it's been brilliant getting to work with the Community Waterway Partnership and I don't know if anyone went along to the World Rivers Day that happened the other weekend, but what a spectacular event. And it's great to see so many people working together in the urban space to improve the waterways.
And if I can just add to that, I think, you know, you've raised a good point about impact on the ground. And I think it's also what is impact on the ground, because ultimately the Y Connection project wasn't about action. It wasn't about planting more trees, putting up fences and so forth. It was, a key part was, how do we collectively raise the general awareness and knowledge of the wider community? Because, once we have that, then we can, all sort of move the waka in the right direction. And so the challenge for us is to work out how can we show, that impact, because if we can even change the minds and thoughts, hearts and minds of one or two people, in an area, I think that can have incredible flow on, beneficial effects into the future. So again, trying to have those lasting change points as well, so that this is it's a change of how we look and interact with our environment. Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Robinson, and thank you for answering that question, because I actually did want the question that Dion had asked, because that was going to be my question, so it's good. And Councillor Robinson.
Sorry, I've been on the list for a while and I forgot I was on the list.
Sorry, you were the
No,
yeah,
it's
you were last, put your
okay.
hand up, but...
I just wanted to comment to say your work is always good, and I appreciated having a wee chat at the Rivers Day the other day. I'm more interested too in the aquifer recharge that you highlight in one of your maps, and the details around that. Are you talking about managed aquifer recharges, or just the natural process of the recharges?
Oh, right. So this diagram is a diagram that we have in the map series just to help people understand how a catchment works. And so the aquifer-related groundwater stuff there was just to show people. It was more just a general sort of comment that quite often what happens in catchments when people are looking at the catchment, they're looking at the surface waterway network and they're not seeing or thinking about what's happening underneath the ground and the connection that has. And so this was about sort of connecting them sort of visually with that. So what's happening in the top of the catchment, while it might not be it's not just about those surface waterway connections to the bottom of the catchment, it's actually about those groundwater connections as well and how those interact. So whilst the map series doesn't deal with groundwater and it doesn't deal with aquifer, this was more about making sure that that was top of mind, part of that wider thing.
Do you think, just to add to that, it's something that's possible to look at in the future, to get a holistic viewpoint of what's really going on in the region with regard to all water?
I turn it on. Sorry. Look, I think that's a really good point. We shied away from it because we're not groundwater experts, and so we didn't feel that we were in a place when we did the original development of the map series to kind of look into that. But I think one of the advantages of having the map series out there now and having people comfortable with it is, again, looking at what are those extension sort of components. And, Canterbury is one of those places where the groundwater is so much a part of this corridor, and we shouldn't really be separating those two out. So if you can, I am very thankful that you raised that, and what we don't want to be in a position that we're saying, hey, we should be doing this, we should be doing that. But if we're hearing that and if that's being asked for, then I think that allows us to sort of then move on and go, well, how could we make that happen? And obviously that would require working closely with the ECAN science team here on that, because they have the knowledge and expertise in that area.
That's great, thank you. I think the amount of questions highlights just how interested everyone is in the work you've done, and it does look really fantastic. I'm really excited to see, hopefully, how far you can keep this going and beyond June 25. I think the absolute least we could do is to support you in any time you need written support. Sounds like you've got a very good relationship with our staff, and so hopefully you'll be able to let us know when you need that support. But also really interested to hopefully you'll be continuing that close relationship with our staff, and where there are opportunities such as just being discussed, that we're able to sort of see how we can work collaboratively in those things. So thank you ever so much, really appreciate your time. Kia ora.
Thank you. Kia ora. There's
a resolution which is to receive the public forum from Jessica Halsey and Shelley McMurtry on the why on the Y Connection project regarding agenda item 4.1 public forum, and provide a reply to Jessica and to Shelley as soon as practicable. So we'll come back to you. Oh, moving. So Councillor Pauling to move, Councillor Sunkel to second, and so all those in favour, please say aye. Right, that's passed. Kia ora.
Where would you like me to leave?
That would be lovely. Thank you for that. So moving on, so we've got no deputations or petitions, we've got no extraordinary or urgent business, and we have no notices of motion. So we're then into agenda item number 7, and that's minutes from the last Strategy and Policy Committee meeting. So has anyone got any comments to make on the minutes? Any points of accuracy? Nothing. So in that case, if I can pose the recommendation that we confirm the minutes from the Strategy and Policy Committee held on 4th of September 24. So Councillor Mackay will move it and Councillor Ward to second. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And all those against? No one. That's carried, thank you. So then we're moving into these are now report items for decision. And so we're going to go, I'm going to suspend standing orders for this part of the meeting. So here we go, this is what I need to do. So we going to suspend the standing orders till the end of the meeting. You can see it all up on the board. I don't need to read all of that. So I've got Councillor Pauling is happy to move that. Can I have a second for that? So Councillor Robinson to second. So all those in favour, please say aye. Any against? No. So that's carried. And actually, I probably should have said the reason for doing that is so that we can actually have quite a fulsome discussion on the next agenda item rather than it being in a very sort of formalised, each person gets their turn to speak. Although I would appreciate that we, have some manage out the way we talk. It's not just a free-for-all, but you know what I mean. So item 8, I've got, now, sorry, let me find, 8. So if Emma Davis and Cecilia Ellis would like to come to the table and they'll speak to this item, to this paper.
Kia ora koutou. Today we're here to present the Strategy and Policy Committee Forward Work Programme for endorsement. The Committee Forward Work Programme has been developed as a tool to support a strategic and proactive approach to agenda setting and provide visibility of the matters to come to the committee. This Forward Work Programme has been informed by the strategy and policy guidance needed to meet commitments made through the long-term plan Council adopted in June. There are 2 aspects to the Forward Work Programme that's attached to this paper. There's a shorter term look at the upcoming agenda items, which also includes some planned workshops to come that are relevant to the Strategy and Policy Committee. The workshops are included for visibility, given that in the strategy and policy development process tend to lend itself to workshop first before coming to the committee for guidance and decision. And the next version of this agenda review will include the 2025 meeting dates. The Forward Work Programme also includes a high-level timeline of relevant matters for the Strategy and Policy Committee. Recognise that this largely outlines the strategy and policy products to deliver, and I note that a drive of the new committee structure was to support the integration of work towards outcome measures set out in the long-term plan. So the strategy advice on these matters will be grounded in the context of those outcomes sought. Also, just wanted to note the committee purpose to provide guidance on current and emerging issues of local, regional, and national significance in the wider context of this changing external environment. The forward work program will be reviewed in agenda items to assess these current and emerging issues. For example, implications of the central government legislative and policy program, and a high-level timeline of central government reform relevant to council and local government is also provided in the attachments for context. So we're seeking endorsement on the committee forward work program today, noting that it is an iterative document developed at a point in time as council and staff transition to the new committee structure, new governance arrangements, and transition to the core services delivery model, and also in the context of the changing external environment. It will be used to inform agenda planning meetings with the committee chair and deputy chair, and it will come back to the committee a couple of times in the year for review. I also just wanted to note that forward work program has been developed for the Regional Delivery Committee as well, and that's due to go to the committee next week. So they've been developed in parallel just to understand the respective committees' purposes. So we'll take questions of clarity and feedback on the forward work program today. And we have some staff in the room to provide clarity on items as appropriate, but we will take feedback away and just consider how that aligns with the long-term plan commitments in alignment with outcomes sought, and consider those through agenda planning meetings and future reviews of the committee forward work program.
So, thank you, Cecilia. So really just to emphasise this, what we've captured here in this paper is what the work programme looks like off the basis of the long-term plan that we've just approved. And so this is really the opportunity to sort of reflect on that, think about what might be coming forward for the next annual plan, if there's something we see that we feel is missing and want to sort of raise that onto the agenda. This is the sort of time and the discussion to have for that. But fundamentally, we've got on paper what's been funded, what we've got staff committed and currently working on, like that. It's not that everything's stopped to wait for us to come up with a programme. So yeah, we'll have a discussion. So we've got Councillor Robinson first.
Thank you for bringing this on paper. So the long-term plan looked at a targeted regional coastal environment plan to be notified June 2026. This schedule on page 20 does not reflect that. It's showing the end of December 2027. And yeah, it's just, can I, is there a reason that isn't quite accurate, or following that? It's showing that it's been developed all the way right up to 2027, 28, and that is part of the integration, but the targeted plan review was for June 2026.
I could take that away and look at that and just I mean that if need be, yeah.
Guess is there do you think there could be a precautionary mistake in that table, or is it known to be changed? I'm unaware of it, so thank you.
It's certainly intended that it reflects the current timeframes. So
It may just be including the hearings and decision-making period as well, but we'll come back to you on that. Yeah.
So okay, Councillor Mackay.
We're in discussion. We're in discussion, is that correct, Chair? Or are we still questions?
Questions I think at this point, and then we can have discussion and we can invite staff back to the table to answer questions when we're in discussion, in fact, if we need to.
Okay, well then I'll frame my question before I go into the discussion. So just with regard to the table on page 19, and I guess I would go to the column meeting to be confirmed March 2025 and evaluate current and emerging issues. Is that including things like economic discussions that we would have for Canterbury? the context, the wider context of where we work in. I mean, you did sort of mention it a little bit in the covering conversation, but is that what you're thinking there?
Yes, so as part of bringing back the forward work program, the broader context and external environment in which we're operating in, yeah.
Councillor Edge?
I think mine's more discussion.
Okay, Councillor Swiggs.
Yeah, I'm going to follow on from Councillor Mackay here, and we spoke about this in the when we set the agenda around the regional economic sustainability focus, and I understand that what we've been presented today is reflective of our long-term plan. But my question that I've been thinking and pondering over is how do we then, now that we've got this today, how do we signal to, if it is indeed the will of the council, to start looking at other things that we may want to consider? And the reason that I'm raising regional economic sustainability is the Waikato Regional Council has just gone through this process, and they have disbanded their Regional Economic Development Agency in favour of a collaborative regional economic sustainability approach with all their TAs, where they are going to work with pulling it all together so there's a far more collective and cohesive approach to regional economic sustainability and development in light of environmental sustainability and other factors that are within the four well-beings of the RMA. So the question really is, how do we elevate that as a thing that we, if it's the will of the council, want to look at, and then bring back options so that we can then discuss those options in subsequent annual plans. And it's not just this regional, say, economic sustainability issue, but it's any other strategies or ways that we may want to do things or elevate things, strategies to do potentially at this council. But the process will be obviously has to be funded through a subsequent annual plan, but that's, do you know what I'm trying to sort of say? And I'm going to use the regional economic sustainability part because I do find that as a missing gap in our current strategies.
Where there are ideas from this council that they would like to look at the development of a particular strategy, be it a sort of a regional economic strategy, that would be something for a discussion, and then to sort of for us to consider, and we could, look at that, how we consider that either through workshops, but we would just need to give that a lot more consideration. I'm aware the Canterbury Mayoral Forum are doing some work around sort of economic development. So I think this is the opportunity to identify those areas of further interest.
Just to continue, so would that be through a formal resolution at this committee to say, go away and bring us some advice about, like you've just said, the Canterbury Mayoral Forum is looking at something at the moment. I wasn't fully aware of that, but what does that look like from a regional council point of view, and how do we then work with the TAs that we work with? And the other question that I was also going to ask, and it's probably quite pertinent, is I really love what we've done here with the central government work, the high-level central government and that interrelationship that we have a regional government. But I think there's also an opportunity here to go down to the TA level as well. So what are the TA's district plan processes that they're going to be going through? Because we submit to those, so that would be quite useful for us to have an overview of those as well. That's some work down the track, I imagine. But then we've actually got a full picture of all things going on in Canterbury. But going back to the regional, the question that I asked before, is that the best way you think from the staff point of view is to put an amendment in a resolution asking you to bring back some advice at a future meeting about something?
I've got some thoughts on that. I think it would be interesting for there to be a discussion here at the council, and then we hear about what some of the ideas are. One step could then be sort of a follow-on workshop to explore those further, rather than agree to a resolution to go into looking at a specific issue. But that's a suggested approach, so I think it might be interesting to hear how the discussion goes, but I'll look to the chair to guide that too.
Yeah, I'm just reading the recommendations, and actually I think recommendation 2 captures this, discusses and endorses the policy forward work programme to be used to inform agenda setting by the committee chair, deputy chair, and lead director. So we, that agenda setting is then, the workshops, the next pieces. So I think the scope in this recommendation is there to pick up what's heard in the discussion, get a sense of, the interest around the table in particular aspects, and that can then get moved forward through that recommendation. I don't think we necessarily need something new and very specific about any one particular thing that any particular council puts forward at this point in time. I think it's all to be caught, and you're the deputy chair, Dion, so you'll be able to make sure that one stays on the agenda, won't you? I think that to me that recommendation 2 does capture that, but have a look at it, and if you feel like it needs to be more formal and explicit than that, then raise that. But it's fine. Councillor Davies.
Just regarding public transport, where do we see business cases and investigations kind of fitting into our new structure?
We've got GC here to provide some more information on that. A lot of the public transport conversations will be brought to you through the annual plan discussions. So that's the main mechanism, but I can turn to Jesse and see if he's got anything further to add.
Kia ora koutou. Good question. As we go along through the process of developing our plans and strategies and bringing back work through the committee, we'll need to inform some of the business case processes that we undertake. Some of it will be maybe through this committee, and some of it may be through the regional delivery committee as well. And certainly influenced by where we go with our annual plan discussions and the work program that we have. So, it just depends on the context at the time. But there are definitely avenues to bring that through to council as well.
And so can you just briefly talk to the strategic approach to integrated transport and land use planning and sustainable funding on the table on page 20? Is that just an ongoing?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's absolutely noted as an ongoing discussion that we're having between there's the Greater Christchurch Partnership, the Mayoral Forum, the Regional Transport Committee, thinking around there's a number of pieces of work that are delivering on different aspirations in different spaces. So particularly with, say, the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan, which identified some key directions and actions that we need to take with transport. So how are we bringing that integrated land use and transport discussion through to our council here to inform discussions we're having through partnership approaches on different projects. The sustainable funding is certainly a challenge in terms of generating more revenue into the system, particularly for transport. And so how do we, there's a number of streams of work happening at the moment looking at alternative funding options. And how do we bring that back to the committee as well? So this is a note, I guess, in the table that this is an ongoing stream of work, and there will be things that inform the future work program of this committee.
And Councillor McKenzie.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Really, it's just a question around the 2 recommendations. It talks about endorsing and the work program as an iterative document. And then the second one specifically refers to informing agenda setting by the committee chair, deputy chair and lead director. I'm just checking that that's not specifically trying to cut out the core service leads from that discussion when it is appropriate.
That hasn't been discussed. It wasn't something that came into my mind to think that we were going to be attempting to do that. So no, there's certainly not any intention on my part. Or no, Councillor Sprigg says no either.
We could add it in if you
want. Yeah, I mean, just sometimes when you have specific recommendations, the wording is important. But I doubted if, in fact, that was your intention. So I only just raised it as a question, really.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, unless staff give me different advice, I don't actually see why we couldn't have a full stop at the end of be used to inform agenda setting, full stop. I mean, the chair and deputy chair have a particular role, as does the director, but I'm quite happy to chop out the back end there and just put it full stop at end of setting, if that makes people feel more comfortable that we haven't got an alternative agenda going on here. And sorry, Councillor Korako.
Oh, kia ora. I'm just looking at the timetable, and I get the Te Tiriti stuff, particularly around the Treaties Principles Bill and also the MACA Amendment Bill. I'm just wondering, how do we factor in, because the fast track projects have already been released, so how do we cater for that now that they actually have been released, and how do we cater for that in this work program? For instance, solar farming and all of that.
So we've got some more work to do to assess and understand the implications of the projects that have been now included on the fast track bill. So we're really waiting for once Cabinet have met, and so we've got a better picture of those, and then we will assess what the implications are for that, both in terms of our strategy development and any sort of operationalising. So as that goes through, we'll keep this committee informed on that process.
So I recognise the fact that it's only just been released, but have you had the opportunity to look at it and actually identify which ones are actually going to be subject to work here?
Yes, we have done that, and that will be included in the update to councillors later this week. So we've got an update coming directly to you on that and which ones are particularly relevant to Canterbury.
I'm just, again, cognizant, and I'll bring it up again in the next paper, around the Takutai Moana MACA Amendment Bill. The submissions close on the next week.
Yep, so we can provide you an update on that when we discuss the next paper.
And I just had a question about waste management and waste strategy, in that I know that there's a piece of work being done through, I think, the Joint Waste Committee, looking at waste streams and volumes. Of course, I've got on the fast track bill, there is the Project Kia on there, which is a huge waste management piece of kit that potentially now lands into a system where we haven't actually got the base data that's the sort of information you really need in order to make good decisions about where do these things go, what's the need for them, how do they fit into the waste hierarchy and ensure, avoid undermining recycling and all those other things. And I know Councillor Mackenzie has talked to this before as well, like a waste strategy side of things, like is that being progressed through mayoral forum or waste, or where are things at with that, and is that actually a piece of work we should pick up and put into here somewhere?
Through Chair, I don't have an update on the waste strategy specifically, but I can bring that back to this committee. Just in terms of the fast track bill, we've only just received the list, obviously, in terms of what's been released by the government, and there will be some further details coming out from Cabinet around, as Emma said, around what the specific details of each of those projects is. Whether those projects have changed from what we currently know as to what was actually submitted to government as part of that list, that's what we need to understand a bit better. For instance, as you mentioned, Councillor, around the solar farms and those type of things, those projects will be, once we know a bit more of the detail specific around those projects, we can bring that into the work that we're doing. So, for instance, through the Mayoral Forum, we're doing an energy inventory at the moment. So understanding all of these different projects across Canterbury and where they are will be really important information to include within that energy inventory to then launch us into whatever strategic thinking we do after that around our energy supply, energy security and those type of things. Similarly for the waste project will be an important part of considerations when we're talking about a waste strategy for Canterbury.
Kia ora, Jesse. Thanks for that. my only concern is that, and the MAC is probably the most, the best example of that, is that suddenly I reckon that we need to be looking at the fact that they're going to actually happen yesterday, because that's the name of them. They're called Fast Track. I mean, it sounds as though you've been a little bit proactive, because identifying, not actually, they only been confirmed, recently. But I'm just worried about the fact is that then it's the timing thing, particularly around Project Kia, that they want to get that thing moving. Kia ora.
Through Chair, just another on the fast track consent. So there's a number of Greater Christchurch related subdivision plan change type consents. So we have information to a point about what those were and where they got through in their process before being pushed into the fast track process. But it's just whether anything's changed from what we know to what's been proposed to government or submitted to government. So that's what we're waiting on, is the further information in that regard. So then we can move quickly to inform council about where our approach should be.
Sorry.
Those have particular issues around public transport, for instance, which we need to understand better as well. So,
thank you, because I understand that. I know one already, which is Project Hananui, down in Rakiura, Stewart Island, and now Sanford's are saying that they may not be able to go through with it. So I get that it's a moving thing. Thank you. Kia ora.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and Councillor Swiggs.
Yeah, one other question that I had, and I emailed about this last week, was around that that bit in this paper that I think was missing, around that enhanced monitoring and compliance focus that we're trying to have from the delivery committee, and how that relates back into our strategy. So when gaps and issues are identified from a delivery point of view, how we can then take those issues, feed them into, are they either actual delivery problems, or are they issues with strategies and policies that we may have at the council, and then how does that feed back through to our work program and into this committee? So that was something that I think I wanted to raise here, because it is an important closing that loop in these three committees and how that works. And I think it's really important that we do air that and think about how we do that. So have you guys had any further thought about potentially how we do that through this work program that we've got, that we're potentially signing off on today?
Yes, I mean, we've added in there into this longer term look about, strategic approach to effective environmental regulation, recognising that there will be some conversations coming to this committee. Yeah.
Is there a formal way we can get that recognised, and it might not be something that we do right now today, but is there some way we can formally recognise that, especially with Nick and Claire and I really like especially that point that Councillor Davies said. I think that's very, very important as well. I hadn't thought about those specific strategies and plans that have been made. He raises a really good point, and how do we recognise those things as well?
I think the development of the forward work programs is a step to actually achieving that, and actually giving us that more proactive forward view of what are the pieces of work and the interdependencies between those. And obviously, as the Regional Delivery Committee sort of fulfil their function around insurance, assurance and identifying issues, then they can refer those back to council, or they could be picked up by strategy and policy in terms of implications. So this is really both the forward work program for both committees is sort of a mechanism for actually addressing that and making sure that there's good connections between those.
I wonder whether it's maybe a paper just outlining how, because it's really around how the staff are connecting and communicating. And I just speak this as somebody who worked in planning policy in the past, was very much engaged with the enforcement team, with the consenting team, to understand where there were things that weren't working so well for them, that had got a policy sort of had created some complexities. And so I would expect that communication and that loop is happening, and it's happening within the management side of things, and so we don't see it. But I wonder whether that actually is something that's worth, or if it's not, then that maybe needs to be thought about. But yeah, I don't know, Catherine, if you've got any views on that.
I was just reflecting on a meeting that staff were having earlier today, where this very question about monitoring came up, and what's the impact on how do we know how the plan goes. So it is a live conversation, as you say, consent and compliance planning, and the strategic leadership of, for example, environmental regulation and protection. So, but I think what we're doing as staff here is listening to you, putting your thoughts down, so that we can go away and just think about then what that means to a future iteration of the work program, so that you get the level of oversight that you need to make sure that we're thinking of the things that need to be thought through. So, it's ringing bells with me. So, thank you.
So, Councillor Pauling, you had a question.
Kia ora. Yeah, really good discussion. And first of all, I just want to say, thought it was a really fantastic paper. I like charts and tables and stuff, so it's good. I think really good to see the work we've got laid out in front of us. And I think the points that Dion have raised and Joe have raised are really important too. And I think what it shows is what I see reflected in the tables is sort of what's in our LTP and what we've already identified as key issues that we've got funding for and programs for. But what's coming up is the things that maybe are coming at us or that are part of the future thinking. And I think, just like what Vicky said, trying to get a mechanism for where do we put those things and how do we try to work on them, knowing that the staff have got their current jobs to do right in front of them. And we've got to be conscious of overloading that and then not achieving the LTP that we've got. So it's just finding that mechanism. And maybe that is, like Vicky's saying, how do we have something that identifies and sort of parking lot things and then prioritises them for action going forward. And maybe that is through the annual plan process that we can identify those things and start building a program of work around them, but knowing that not much is going to happen until we get to that point. And I just think we might have to be satisfied with that. Or if we choose to prioritise something above that, then we need to know the ramifications to the program. And I mean, that's okay. That's our job as governors, I think. But we've just got to be real conscious of what the mechanism is to do that and how that rolls out. But really good discussion. And I think those things should be in our minds and front of mind, because we're always going to need to react as well to things that are happening with other agencies, with the government, with our partners here in Greater Christchurch and throughout the region. So how do we do that to be nimble? So yeah, I just think finding that balance between what we've currently got in front of us, which is massive, as you can see laid out here, and then those things that are just going to keep brewing away and we're going to have to do some thinking about. You've raised waste, there's energy, the PT asset stuff, I totally agree. We should be constantly thinking about that and where do we just focus that energy. So yeah, awesome work. Really think it's great.
And Councillor Scott.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Craig's just said. I think some of the stuff that we've got down here is operation and tactical. I mean, it's not strategic. We've already done that stuff. We've stuck it in somewhere. The changes we need to make around PT and the funding is a tactical response to what's happening in terms of the funding. So I don't see that as strategic. I think the opportunity for us is to look outside the building and the things that are going to affect us, and there's plenty out there. But then just supporting what Craig said in terms of how do you sort and prioritise those, and I think that's your issue, Chair, how you do that, because the capacity to deliver some of this stuff that you might bring in because you think it's important is going to be difficult. We're constrained in terms of funding and people and all those other things, so you've got to be really careful, but we've got to be strategic, not reactionary. So I'll speak more to this later. Vicky, thank you.
Yeah, and to that point, that's precisely why we started with what are we actually doing and what's in the LTP already. So yeah, if for exactly that reason, yeah. So is that all questions? Or staff, would you like to respond to Councillor Scott's korero there? No. Okay, so you're welcome to leave the table and then we can have further conversation. So So the recommendations are up on the screen. Up on the screen.
Chair, sorry, Chair. Are we still in a discussion before we get into
We'll
that?
move this and then we have discussion. I think that's the right way round. Is that? Yeah. After or do we move? Or we can have discussion and then move first. Yeah, no, it is right. Sorry, I'm getting confused. Right. So we'll move this first. So do I have a mover for the recommendations on the board? Councillor Pauling, the seconder. Councillor Edge. So we'll move those, and then discussion. That's right, and then we.
Yeah, just like I said before, I think it's a really good paper. Highlights all those key areas of work that we've already identified through the long-term plan, and things that we need to work on. I really like how it's got the 3 core services looked at there. Obviously, the annual plan work we've got to do, and of course the dates when we can expect things to come back to us, which I think is really great. Yeah, I was really happy to see the biodiversity strategy stuff in there, the dust stuff, but also the Braid River revival work, land strategy, gravel management strategy, managed retreat work, and of course all the PT work. But yeah, just note what I said before about those other issues that are sort of hot issues that are going to come up, and how do we respond to them. So maybe it needs another column along the bottom, another row along the bottom, just to say, to put some of those hot topics in a parking lot sort of fashion, so that we can know they're there, but we might not be able to deal with them, like below the line sort of thing. So yeah, really, really good. And one of those issues for me, and I don't know, haven't spoken to Ian about this for a while, but I have raised it with a number of staff in the last week, is just that river rating stuff, that to continue that drive in that space around the district-wide rating, potentially for Waimakariri, in consultation with them, of course, and the ratepayers there. But yeah, just to keep that work ongoing as well, I think that's really important. So yeah, just really support this paper and the work that's been done. So thank Vicky and Dion and the staff that have worked on this. Thank you.
So Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Vicky. Yeah. So look, I think the timings for the various activities in the work program are good. I would suggest that in terms of the community preparedness and response to hazards, that the topic in the November workshops might be slightly. So I've been talking to Dion and Vicky and Stephen and his team about perhaps having a more collective approach, a whole of system approach to the river strategy, how we manage our river strategy, rather than breaking it down into the individual actions. And I think that will better deal with the individual actions which sit in our sort of work schedule in terms of Braided River Revival. Where does that fit in with our strategic approach to river resilience and sustainable funding, which is the district-wide or regional-wide or however funding system we might move to, and where does that fit in within the management strategies around how we manage the rivers, and part of that is the gravel management strategy. So I think if we can get a overarching strategy for how we work our river systems, or manage our river systems, then the other things perhaps more logically find their place within that overarching strategy. So that's what I've been proposing, and that's what I'd like to suggest might be the topic of the workshop. And you can have specific topics, but we'll continue to work with Vicky and Dion and the appropriate directors to make sure that we've got that right.
Yeah, and that interesting, just because one of the things I wanted to sort of flag, and I've spoken about before, is that actually we forget about the drought aspect, albeit it's very much been present recently. But that very much ties into sort of a holistic approach to river management. We've had the presentation from Scott Wilson about the significance of the upper gravels in the Braided River system to contribute to augmenting and keeping up the groundwater tables and so on in our region. So that holistic approach and understanding all those interconnections, I think, is really valuable. Councillor Swiggs has talked about having an overarching diagram of all the various sort of strategies and plans and how they connect, which ones are statutory, which ones are non-statutory and so on. And I feel like if we can see all of those pieces, then we may be able to see how that's some rationalisation. Again, it's sort of in some ways also talking about rationalising and simplifying to sort of make sure there's not gaps because we've got things in different places, but also that we're getting the benefit of having things well integrated and holistic. So, sorry, Councillor Mackenzie, yeah.
Yeah, look, I agree entirely with what you've just said, Vicky, because I think some of our so-called strategies are more management tools rather than strategies, and I think breaking those out and putting them in the right place is probably quite important for not only for us as governors, but also the directors and their teams to understand where the lines don't cross. Yeah.
And the wider world outside that uses them as well. Yeah, certainly. So any other comments? Councillor Edge?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I totally agree with Ian. It was one of the issues that I picked up in terms of that page 19, community preparedness. It's kind of, there are things in there, but something that I think if we have an overarching strategy that encompasses all of those things and considers all of those things, it would be really good. I'm kind of thinking of the a bar chart thing that was in the Before the Deluge document, where it had a 250 to 500 year approach to the management of rivers. To me, we're there now in terms of the multi levels of tools that we can use, and looking at that as a key as well. But I was wanting to also include in that sort of area of thinking, looking at the land and property portfolio or land and property work that I know Giles's team's been looking at. In the context of perhaps spatial planning, and we've just seen some information this morning from Y Connection about how these geophysical layers can build up a picture for things, and I'm particularly keen to look at that broader picture. Say with the Waimakariri River corridor, that brings into play things like land ownership, river protections, biodiversity, recreation, our regional parks, our energy, our land ownership. It's a real mountains to the sea Kiukitai approach of a corridor, and say, what's happening in here? What are the issues? And what are the opportunities? And you go through that geophysical conceptual overlay stage to just be able to have some oversight on the issues. And then you say, there's the opportunities to do this or that. So that, and that provides a bit of rationale, rather than just saying, we've got some land over here, let's do this. So, why? All of those sorts of things. So yes, similar to the Y Connection, but in a focused way. And out of that, you might actually develop the overarching strategy for all our braided rivers to say, these are the component parts that we need to consider for this river. Does this one apply here as well? Maybe they do, but it's just some logic in it. So that's one thing from me. Yeah, that would be really good. I mean, I'd like to extend that in terms of your overall strategies, is to look more closely, take one of the Y Connection, say it's Waimakariri, but they did in the Waimakariri zone, and look at that from a catchment perspective, taking to that next stage we talked about with them, that they haven't gone to that next stage, about the groundwater issues, the pollution issues, the land use issues, and just seeing what's the next steps, and use that as an example to say, well, this is how that would relate to our RPS, our freshwater management approach, or management unit approach. So anyway, that's just potentially they're linked, but obviously the program, and I think as Craig says, maybe it's a bullet down below, but I'm really keen to pursue quite quickly the land and property of a river corridor. Just on page item 11, just a couple of other things that I thought would be useful. Item 11. in terms of facilitating your program, you know, you've got workshops and stuff. Where do we fit in, say, invited guests to support the workshops or support the strategy, so that we're saying, okay, we're going down this road. Yeah, so just consideration of where that might fit.
Yeah.
I think that's probably all from me, really. And it would be good, I think it was item clause 6. Just mention of the outcome measures. And I just wonder, it would be good to regularly update us about where the outcome measures and how we're tracking. I don't know, maybe that's the quarterly thing, I'm just not sure, but that means that we, you know, we're on. Yeah, you keep it in front of us, that would be good. In terms of the bar chart on page 20, and really just in line with what Ian was saying and what I've just been saying too, I think the council adoption implementation stage of that purple box, I think there's more work to be done, and I think that we need to push back that black box and have more discussion and to get that right. I mean, at the moment, if you're just adopting something, you know, the braided river stuff, it's kind of like as Ian says, they're kind of management approaches, still strategic, but in terms of the overarching stuff, it needs a bit more time, I think. Anyhow, that's me. Thank you.
Yep. So just to comment on the Waimakariri, I think the Waimakariri is particularly interesting because Environment Canterbury have so much of the land is within our control, unlike many of the other rivers where there's so many different pieces belonging to so many different groups or agencies with LINZ and DOC and so on. So it would be really interesting to look at the Waimakariri because it's in our area, you know, under our governance. It also therefore gives us an opportunity. So Councillor Korako.
Kia ora. Look, I really do like Councillor Edge, the way that you know, he's kind of talking about you know, things in what you've just said. But I probably come back to what Councillor Scott actually said around strategic and tactical, because a lot of what Councillor Edge is saying is more tactical, and so we got to then think about, okay, it's real, don't get me wrong, it's all great stuff, but tactically, and so have we got the you know, the funds, the finance to be able to do all that? And I'm glad you've highlighted it, but I think it comes back to that whole basic point, 2 points: the strategic part of it, which you know, we've done. It's more around the tactical stuff that I don't think you know, we actually should be spending a lot more time on, because this is governance, strategic.
Can I respond to that?
Sorry,
one of the objectives of doing this in terms of our land and property is cost benefit analysis. We kind of go down the track of saying, let's put a big solar farm here, and then think, but why? What's the best arrangement of that? And it's kind of like, we've got the data there already. It's a desktop exercise that can be quite good, quite quick in terms of the geophysical stuff. But we don't see that, and if staff saw it, we saw it. Then it's kind of like a very quick wins can be made by looking at land and property ownership and some other issues, and then you go from there. You know.
And I completely toe talk with that, but I'm just looking at the you know, the two motions there that we've got. It's about endorsement, and I know we're discussing it, and that's what we're doing, but I think come back to that one, those two. We just have to endorse the work program, and then you know, the strategy and policy. Councillor
Councillor Mackay, I know you've been waiting a while, but Is yours on a different topic again, or I just because we're having a discussion? That was why I'm trying to sort of see where.
It's a general discussion, but it doesn't line up a little bit with what's been said. So.
Can I check if there's anyone else wants to add into the conversation thread that's happening, has just been, or because I saw Councillor Robinson, I saw you put your hand up. So is that to contribute to this, or is this a new topic?
It is actually about, the agenda item here and what's before us.
Okay, but not
not specific.
That,
it's
in
more
which case,
about.
could I let Councillor McCoy
Sure.
go next, and then I'll come to you. That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a number of points, and this is an iterative process document. So I guess what I would like, there'll be ideas thrown around here at the table today, or put on the table today, not thrown around. That's not a very good language. So I'd like them to be captured and perhaps come back to us for the following meeting. I think just if I can go back around the respect to the questions, and it goes back to Councillor Swiggs raising around strategies, perhaps around delivery of consents and compliance and stuff like that. And I think that I've already had some early discussions with the Director of ERP around that. So, sorry, he's not the Director of ERP, Director of Operations. He's leading that. So, and in the regional delivery, I think it's the next meeting, we have actually got some papers. So in between now and November, there will be some compliance and consents information coming through, so we can build up a conversation around that. I think for me, and I go back once again to what I raised earlier on around the questions around the economy or economic sustainability, as Councillor Swiggs is, this is hugely relevant to Canterbury. We seem to have forgotten about it in the Canterbury Regional Policy Statement, and I know councillors will get a chance to address that, and I will. You've raised droughts, Chair. We also have rates. It's extremely relevant to rates. So, and I mean, that's just touching the surface around the economic sustainability. So, and it's something that this council table seems not willing to have. So I'm very much keen to see it come onto the table, and it may get into a bigger discussion around regional development and all that other stuff. The other one that I know that we have had conversations around, and certainly around public awareness, what does regional council do, what's our roles and what's our functions. We have a brand name called Environment Canterbury, and maybe an opportunity just to have a discussion, and it can be a strategic discussion and touch on technical stuff if we want, around going back to Canterbury Regional Council. And would there be some benefits there? So I'd just like to put that on the table as well. Yep, so those are my 4 key things.
Councillor Scott?
Yeah, I was particularly looking forward to talking about what you've got under background under 4 and the third bullet point there, because I think that is the biggest relevance for me. It's about the changing environment that we exist in, and the fact that impending legislation is going to make possibly a big change to us. We're going to slip back to where we were, or back to the dark ages, or whatever you want to call it, but there's some impending legislation coming our way. There's also, the clock's also ticking in terms of local water done well, and that's now leading to other conversations amongst territorial authorities in our region about what their structure's going to look like, because some of them can't support their own infrastructure, if you like, to do what they do. And I know there's some live conversations going on about things, and I know there's some pretty live conversations going on Hereford Street about what do they look like, and they're certainly going to circle their wagons and do what's important for them, and that's fair enough. But if they did that, and if they said that they wanted more opportunity to be in a unitary, for example, what does that mean to this building? Because that's significant to this building. And I don't think that we think we need to go and get a piece of work done on it by people, but I think us councillors, we need some time to think about that and to talk about it. I'm not saying to do it today, but we need to do it in the next month or so, and take some time get somebody to lead a conversation with us that maybe is better informed than me on it, because I'm just listening to stuff.
Okay, and then I've got Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, I just want to agree with a few people at the table, actually, especially Councillor Edge. He reiterated a lot of thoughts that I've been having during this discussion. I also want to support this going forward. However, with the question I asked earlier with regards to the targeted coastal plan, I have concerns with supporting it as it is without the answer to that quite important question. I'm not willing to watch it just go forward another year or two, and so I hope I can actually reserve my right to vote based on that information. Thank you.
Councillor Sunkel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess coming back to Councillor Swiggs and Councillor Mackay and looking at economic development and also in my mind the economic outcomes of decisions we make at council within consenting and processes. And there was a conversation some time ago about employing, I guess, an in-house economist at some point in time. And so really trying to understand the implications of both the development side, but also the decision making that we make around consenting and a whole lot of processes. So yes, we're a regulator. Yes, we have views and values around the different crises we face. But I'm just a wee bit concerned that we don't fully understand the implications of some of the decisions. So in bringing our strategy together, having that in-house economic advice I think is important, but I'm not just sure where that conversation sits today.
Yeah. If I can, well, my take on it, it's sounding that there's a degree of separation of environment and economy, like that often gets set up as a sort of polarized. The two things don't come together, but I actually think they do. And particularly if you look at things, both you're thinking shorter term and longer term. So I would absolutely support getting some good economic advice, but within that, explicitly looking at it both in the short term and the longer term, and where there's short term risks around, and the long term risks and how we transition between. I think that's, that's a huge live conversation and absolutely relevant to Environment Canterbury. So yeah, totally don't see that as something I would push back on. So Councillor Swiggs.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to you, Vicky, for the work that you've done on this. You've really tried to sort of pull it together, and it's and as Councillor Acting Chair has said, it's the picture of what we've got at the moment that's been funded in our LTP, and I really like that suggestion, and it's kind of where I was going about having another line about upcoming things that are important to councillors or important to the region in terms of even our constituents wanting to raise with us as strategies, so that we can actually get the information, not do the work, but get the information so that we can have informed decisions at times when we're allocating budgets, which is long-term plans or annual plans and things like that. I think that's a really smart way to move forward. I would actually like to get an answer to the question that Genevieve raised, because I don't want a councillor around the table to feel like they don't have the answer that they want to be able to vote on it. So if there is the ability for somebody from the staff to give an answer to that question, it should be relatively easy before we come to the vote, because I would prefer her to be able to vote for it.
Yeah, and if we need to adjourn for a relevant member of staff to come in, because I'm not aware of any change.
And I'm not either.
No,
I'm just.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Mackay.
I'll just make a comment, because if you actually read this, it says Regional Coastal Plan Stage as Stage 1 to the Integrated Regional Plan. So I suspect it's the Integrated Plan, that the date there, and we're still only looking around the formal process for the Integrated Plan in 2027. We have been told by staff that the Regional Coastal Plan is going to be in 2 stages.
The recommendation that was passed through the long-term plan decision-making was for funding to be notifying on a targeted coastal plan for 2026, And in every other aspect that in this table, unless I've missed something else, there's a very clear date for that. But the notification of that particular targeted coastal plan for 2026, as was agreed at long-term plan, is not explicit in this bar chart or Gantt chart. So I think that that's a very reasonable question to ask, and it's important that as council we know if there is something that means that that's no longer the plan, then obviously as we supported and gave the funding to achieve that, we need to know about it. So I don't think that's an unreasonable question. But if we can get an answer to that promptly and assure all of us, actually, I think there's several of us in the room concerned about that, then that would be great if we can have that.
There has been no change in time frame. What I'm just trying to check with staff is whether we've correctly represented what's there, or is there something that we could do to clarify that for you. So there's no change in timing, but it's just whether that's correctly represented there.
Yeah, so it's just adding maybe an additional little line.
Do you have
Just like,
I mean, I would need to check that with Andrew. As I said, there hasn't been any change to the plan, but and we may have incorrectly, captured that on the document. But I would just like the chance to confirm that with Andrew Parish.
thank you. And yeah, apologies that I didn't pick that up sooner. Councillor Pauling?
One idea that we could do is if we can just have a secretarial note in the minutes that indeed, as in the long-term plan, the targeted coastal plan change will be notified in December 2026. So if that's just noted in the minutes, that could be helpful. I mean, we're saying nothing's changed, so let's be clear on that. Happy if you have to go away for 5 minutes and get that confirmation, but I'm pretty sure that's right. And if that's in there, then that would be good. The other two things that I think that have come up is the sort of hot topic idea. Maybe that's a note as well, that would be added to the first page of the attachment over time, and that the chair and the deputy keep working on that with the director and fill that out. Could bring it back to us at some point in the future as well as we keep monitoring this. That could be a good way to do it. And the third one is really relating to, and just because I'm listening to the discussion here, related to what Ian raised earlier about the core service leaders and how you interact with them. And maybe that's another note to say that the chair and deputy of the S&P committee, along with the director, will work with the core service leaders where appropriate, whatever. And that's just another note, just to tidy that up. And that might make everyone happy to vote and move on. So yeah, that's just some ideas if people would support that. Yeah.
I just thank you for that, and to Dion as well. But I just want to note in the JKIDS report, the notification date is June 2026. So a secretarial note, if it can reflect that, please, rather than December. Thank you.
Okay. And I would also, I'd like to pick up this the suggestion around invited guests, which I do actually think, in terms of thinking about that future, there's lots of really good discussion, and we've got some great organisations and very capable people on our doorsteps in Canterbury that would be really good to hear from. And I think that, making sure that we as governors are aware of the sort of hot topics and conversations going on and looking out to the future, that's really critical, and bringing in that expertise, I think it's valuable for staff as well. And if we can facilitate something that's not just necessarily for councillors only, that could be really valuable. So be really keen to hear, anybody, let me know if you've got particular people in mind. I've certainly got some of my own, which I think I've sent through in the past, and let's see how we can sort of formalise that and tie them in with maybe workshops, see what we can do. So has anybody else got anything else they want to add? Oh, Councillor Edge.
Two things. Foreshadowing an amendment to motion 2 in line with what you were suggesting of putting a full stop at the end of setting. Doing that. But also, I just, given the conversation that Councillor Mackenzie had, and similar lines to my thinking too, could we make a secretarial note to the effect that consideration of an overarching strategy for rivers within the context of the strategy proposed? Is that just to get it on the agenda, because there's a link here between ARC, land and property work that's being done, and I just think that there's some coordination required for those, but it might just
Okay, yeah. Somebody else needs to move. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Okay. So yeah. To the first point, we can buy because you've seconded that recommendations. But if there's a general agreement to just put a full stop after, then that's fine as long as the majority, over 75% agree with an amendment to take those bits out. That's fine. So we sort that bit first and then come back to the next piece. So how did I do that? Just say. Okay, just the moving sector. Okay, fine.
Just the idea of the sectoral note that I raised was so that you could just leave that. I think it is good to note that the chair and deputy and the lead director will work together on the agenda setting. The secretarial note was just to go to Ian's point to say that the core service leaders could work with you guys when needed. So I'd actually prefer to leave it personally, but I'm not going to die on a ditch over it if you really want to change it. But I just think it's good to be clear and then have a note about the core service leaders being involved as well. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah. Okay. And then to the other point, which is around a sort of holistic strategy. I think the point of this discussion is really to pick up all these things for staff to take away and then bring back to us. And so to sort of pick out one particular aspect and capture that and not all the other sort of parts of the conversation seems to me like we're sort of already directing off the back of this before we've had the staff advice. Does that?
Yeah, and Claire made a good suggestion earlier that staff have been collecting all the ideas, so we'll bring them back collectively because there may be ways of addressing them that staff can advise on that makes it a bit more streamlined.
And just quickly too, I mean, in terms of Councillor Karako's issue, in terms of technical or tactical versus strategic, that second line there, we're endorsing something that is a program that is iterative, and that's really what we're even having this discussion now. It's a part of the iterative process that it's a moving target for the strategy committee to check out. So yeah.
Okay, so I guess your finger up there, Councillor Mackenzie. So I'm just about to see it in the distance. You have to wave it a bit.
Look, I was just supporting your position, Vicky. I don't think it's appropriate to have specific notes. I think the director will have listened to the conversation, and I think actually developing the specifics around what we do in these workshops is a work in progress. So yes. Let's not be too specific just yet.
Yeah, great, thank you. Appreciate that. So we've had, I think, a pretty fulsome conversation and got some good information and just ideas that staff will have picked up. And I know it's all being recorded in beautiful, crystal clear audio, so you can go back and listen to everything that's been said in time. So as this stands now, and were we adding a note, or does that come up on the screen? A note around the coastal plan, or they're adding it to the minutes, fine, but not on the screen here in real time. Okay, no problem. So in which case then, could I have all those who are in favour of the recommendations, please say aye. Aye. Any against? No. So that's carried. Thank you. So then. I think it'll make it be clearer to extend that. So I'm just conscious that we've got 10 more minutes until the 2-hour time when we need to extend our meeting without the break. So are you comfortable for us to move that we'll extend the meeting and have this item 8.2 do that now? Or would you rather pause take the break, and then come back and pick this back up. Okay. That sounded like the stronger opinion, to pause. Okay, so we'll adjourn. Councillor Mackenzie, Chair.
Just in case you're interested, there's a new study.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor. So we're 1 minute behind now. So starting back, and so we're all live and yep. Oh, here comes Councillor Sunkel. So just get us all back to the table. So picking up back up into item 8.2. I think we need to do anything official to restart, do we? We just no. Can I invite Alex Morgan, Team Leader for Strategy and Planning, Biodiversity and Biosecurity, to the table, please? And Alex, I believe you're going to introduce this paper to us, and then I anticipate there'll be some questions, and we'll take it on from there. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. So this item closes off outstanding resolution from the now disestablished Biodiversity and Biosecurity Committee by seeking endorsement of the approach for councillor involvement in the revitalisation of the Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy. The recommendations before you seek the nomination of 2 councillors to be part of that revitalisation process through membership on a steering group, as well as being the nominated councillors to participate in the collaborative workshops that are being proposed to drive the strategy content. The paper in front of you clarifies the purpose of both that steering group and the collaborative group. And I'll just, for purposes of trying to bed that in, I'll go over both of those 2 functions again now for you. The steering group is about project oversight, established to oversee project process, ensure that the deliverables that we've set out are met, and ensure that the project team, which will comprise myself and some others, is appropriately resourced to progress that piece of work in accordance with the timeframes that have been agreed previously. The recommended sort of composition of that group in front of you there includes 2 councillors, mana whenua representation to the extent that they wish to be involved, and especially given that the Mayoral Forum has included the Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy revitalisation as part of their regional goals, and the requirements for territorial authorities to consider regional biodiversity strategies in their district planning processes. We also believe it's appropriate to seek some representation from territorial authorities in that process, and the paper specifically outlines that is probably appropriate from amongst the existing Canterbury Biodiversity Champions group, and I can explain more about that group if you've got any questions about that, but Councillor Pauling is your Environment Canterbury representative on that group. And then the final member of that steering group is proposed to be a senior staff member from Environment Canterbury, and that's largely because staff here have the sort of power and authority to delegate and apply the resources that this organisation has to help support that process. So, and ultimate accountability will sit with the staff here tasked with delivering this process. So, on the assumption that those recommendations or some form of them are agreed to, staff will develop a draft terms of reference for that steering group, and we will get that amended and agreed to at the first meeting of that group. I guess furthermore, and something I should have probably pointed out directly in that paper, but the establishment of a steering group to support policy development is actually perfectly aligned with the delegated powers of this what are you called, committee? The Strategy and Policy Committee, as set out in your terms of reference. So the delegated powers, authority to act, the establishment of informal working groups or steering groups for the purposes of progressing strategic or policy development. So that's kind of what we're considering here. The second group that we're talking about is the collaborative sort of strategy design group. The primary function of that group will be to contribute to the strategy revitalisation process proper, with the goal of informing a final revitalised Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy. So that's our collaborative co-design process. The core makeup of that group is largely already known and established. We had a lot of them come together earlier in the year as part of the discovery session that we hosted on the Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy. It comprises the full spectrum of usual and unusual characters from across all sort of walks of the community. It's comprised of the existing signatories to the strategy document, mana whenua, territorial authorities, education institutions, and key industry players. So that anticipated role of that group would be invited along to a series of collaborative workshops with the intent that we collate all of that information to inform the ultimately revitalised strategy. So the recommendations that sort of surround the establishment purpose and specifically the councillor roles in those two groups are what you see before you in those recommendations. And that's probably enough from me for now, so I'm very happy to take questions.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It seems to me that the steering group and the collaborative group have got significantly different roles. So I'm not sure why I'm interested to know why you're rolling those two functions together in terms of council makeup. And if I can just continue the question really about the collaborative group, are people like the catchment collectives involved in that at a high level? Because you just didn't mention them, but I thought they probably were. Yeah.
I think I'll do the second part first. Yes, I kind of anticipate it being more of an open process. One of the things we discussed at our discovery session was who else might need to be in the mix, and one of the identified groups has been the catchment collectives. So I don't know exactly to whom those invites will go, but we will find a way to include that perspective in the process in some way, shape, or form. So, yes, is the answer to the second part. And then,
can I elaborate on that? So, are you expecting that collaborative group process to be sort of specific to parts of Canterbury, or are you going to do it for the whole of the Canterbury region? Because I'm trying to work out what's the best, most appropriate use of councillor expertise, depending on what the collaborative group does.
So it's the Canterbury Regional Biodiversity Strategy. It should be cross-regional in its purpose and intent. Each of the TAs are at various stages along the line of developing biodiversity or natural environment strategies for their own areas. So there's a more local opportunity for strategy making. 3 of those TAs have recently adopted strategies, for example. So the strategy that we're talking about is the Canterbury Regional Strategy.
I get that, but is there any intent that you will be developing that by doing it sort of part region by part region to get to a collective position?
I don't anticipate that, but I'm also conscious that I'm just one voice in what we're describing to be a collaborative design process. So I would be quite interested to hear from all of the others that are involved as to whether that delineation is necessary. I don't want to sort of predetermine the outcome of a collaborative design process about what a final strategy might look like. I mean, I've got my professional view on what I think a regional strategy should do, and it should look to sort of cross the boundaries and be regionally consistent and appropriate and provide the guidance that we know that our TAs in particular want from us, the regional consistency that we can offer as part of that. But there's obviously got to be some room for local flavour, or whether that's an enabling role for the strategy to say it would be great if you had your local strategies or catchment strategies or whatever. But
with your indulgence, Madam Chair, continue the cross-examination. So the fact that you've got TAs, which will have their own biodiversity thing, tends to suggest there's going to be a bit of localism, even though we're developing a Canterbury-wide strategy. And I guess it just seems to me in the collaborative working group part of it, that local constituent councillors may have a role to play, whereas the appointment of 2 members for the for the steering group is very much a governance role, and so I get the steering group part. I'm just a bit unsure as to whether those 2 councillors necessarily should be the people who are only involved in the collaborative working group.
I can actually answer that. The invite has gone out to those agencies. To the TAs specifically, we invited the bio-champion that represented that council. We invited the chief executive and the chair of each of those respective councils, and ultimately it will be up to them to nominate the appropriate person to collaborate with us at the strategy level. And I suspect as we saw at the discovery session, we will see a mix. Some will decide that they would prefer to have one of their councillors involved or one of their biodiversity champions, or some may decide that this is a better position for some of their staff to be in the room. That's certainly what happened last time round. So, I mean, it would be up to them to determine appropriate representation, and we can accommodate either or all of those options.
One of the things I think was a bit of feedback from the discovery session was that potentially having, because there were quite a few councillors went to that, and that we potentially sort of, it's really important that groups all have the ability to talk, and that councillors who have a habit of talking quite a lot don't just take up all of the time. And so I think there's a degree of that here, that actually those collaborative workshops are around having a facilitator. That's out for procurement at the moment. It's written in the paper. And so it's really having councillors who can sort of share information back, keep us aware of what's happening and perhaps some of the key topics, but not overwhelming a group where we actually really need to hear from all the groups. I'm just wondering, Alex, whether whether there's some sense in councillors getting the opportunity to see the list of groups that you're proposing to work with, and sort of how they sit spatially, or what their areas of interest are, and whether councillors could actually have an input into that and go, actually, that looks like a good list, or hey, I feel like I know my area and these guys are missing. Would that resolve some of the concern that I'm sensing, that maybe people might get missed out?
I guess I'm interested in the collaborative area, the second part of the responsibility. I'm interested in then the liaison really between the local constituent councillor from this council, working not only with their TA, the TA representatives, but also making sure that exactly that point, that the catchment groups, the people who are doing the work on the ground, landowners and stuff, are actually, their opinions have been put into the process somehow, that's where I see there are two distinctly different roles here, and I just wonder whether, because that then makes a difference as to which councillors are perhaps best identified as. If we're going to do it all with the same two councillors, then that might be a different mix to councillors sitting at governance level and then this working group stuff.
I think the recommendation to have the consistency across those councillors is the main point. It would be potentially quite challenging to be working back and forth between two distinct subgroups of councillors. So trying to, I guess, just ensure that they're involved in and part of the entire process was the rationale behind that recommendation. But I guess ultimately it is up to you to determine whether you want to split that function. Again, the recommendations that I've made don't suggest that that's a good idea, but and I can continue to... Yeah.
Councillor Pauling, please.
Kia ora, Alex. Just really good work, and I'm so glad this is back in front of us to move on to the next stage of this. So really appreciate your work you've put in here and the thought you've put in. And I get the thing around the steering group and then the participation of those members at the collaborative forum. Having been involved last time in the early 2000s, that was the way it happened. There was a wider group and then there was a steering group. So really think that's a clever idea, and with that facilitation going on. I don't really have any questions other than, I'm assuming the reporting back for this process will be to this committee. And I think we've already discovered that in the last paper we acknowledged that it's in the meeting on the 9th of October, and the next report we will get is in February 2025. So that's the mechanism for the feedback, the formal feedback, and those councillors that we appoint today will have a role in that feedback to this committee. So that's the tie-in back to the wider council. So I'm really happy to support this, and be happy to move it when we get to that. Councillor Southwood, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Scott?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. We've got the emergence of catchment groups which are quite strong across the region, and I guess they're having a big part to play in terms of what's going on. We had a bit of a hurdle with Arawhanua the other day when we were speaking to them at the Hui, when they were questioning the relevance of them, and therefore, how do you see the relevance of them within this? Are they considered a community group, or how are they considered?
I think our primary catchment group interaction through the process to date has been through the aggregating kind of bodies like the Landcare researchers and stuff of the region that sort of represent a broader spectrum of catchment groups. But I mean, you're hitting on, I guess, one of the needs for both yourself and Councillor Mackenzie, one of the needs for this revitalisation, and that is that the context in Canterbury has changed. And that includes the makeup of people doing work on the ground and how they're structured, including catchment groups. So I guess my commitment is that we know that catchment group thing has changed. We know that there are new and emerging roles for those catchment groups, and we'll do our best to capture that perspective as part of that collaborative process. And we've identified that through the sort of existing gap analysis type work that we've done. So I can't sit here and promise that we're going to capture every person and opinion as part of this sort of collaborative process. We have to constrain it in some way, shape, or form. It becomes so unwieldy that we won't actually get anything. But the spectrum of interests that we're inviting to participate, we're hoping are a broad representation of the community at large, and that will, in our current context, include the need to approach or find the role for those catchment groups.
Yeah, I guess a sort of a minor concern of mine would be the fact that they see themselves as being independent, but at the end of the day, to fit in with a strategy and actually make some difference, there need to be some sort of cooperation. And I think once you get your governance group in place, it'd be nice to see a reach out to see where everyone sits in this space, because, I think it's required anyway, Alex.
We can't compel participation or sort of the adoption of this strategy at the catchment group level, but we can offer the opportunity to participate.
Kia ora, Alex. Just following on from Councillor Scott, I'm just sitting here looking at the minutes of that Arawhanua meeting and concerning catchment groups. And one of the things that they're saying is, and it's interesting to know what the test is then, for Environment Canterbury, as to actually engaging, with specific groups. One of the issues that was highlighted at Arawhanua was the fact that they're not actually under any kind of, MPI oversight or anything like that. And that was one of the issues that they had around their environmental entities, is that they kind of work independently of just about everyone. So, yeah, I just support what Councillor Scott's saying. But do we have a test actually as to how these groups actually operate and what kind of oversight, are they?
I feel that's possibly a bit out of scope for this committee paper. Sorry, I actually can't answer that question. I'm sure someone in this organisation could, but I'm not quite sure how I
treat that as a out of scope question. Forget about it. But I just want to support what Councillor Scott's saying and about these catchment groups, is that once this has all been put together, it's going to be a really interesting kind of conversation, particularly when engaging with Papatipa Runanga.
So Councillor Ward, do you want to talk specifically to that topic point? Yes, sir.
Just to add to that, Nook, I know the catchment group that's recently been set up in Mackenzie, that we have targets, and every tranche of money we get, that has to be spent on specific projects, and then when the project's done, that has to be submitted, and then when that's done, then we get the next tranche of money. So it's not just given a sum of money to go, willy-nilly. Like there is targets and deadlines to be met and projects to be recognised to be done in our area and followed through.
Perhaps I can respond a bit more generally, just to maybe provide a bit of peace of mind. I think that in order for this strategy to be successful, it needs to consider what the current context of biodiversity management in Canterbury is. And if the role of catchment groups in that current context is growing and changing, then it would be a disservice of that strategy not to acknowledge that in some way, shape or form. So it needs to be considered as well, it should be, in my view, considered as part of that strategy development. But I guess, again, it would come back to what does that strategy look like when it's done, when a whole heap of different diverse views are all in the room talking about these things together, and what could a strategy do to empower or otherwise a catchment group? Is that the role of that strategy? That's all good conversation for our sort of collaborative co-design process to consider. And there's a role for Runanga in that room as well to provide their views on that.
Councillor Pauling's been waiting a little while. Let him jump in. And
one thing about this discussion is when we did the previous strategy, it actually had signatories to it. So it wasn't only councils, and actually at that time, Te Rūnanga o Naito, who signed up to it. So we had people other than councils, we had industry sign up to it too. And so in terms of a test, it was the fact that they were willing to sign up to the things that were in it, and by doing so contribute to the outcomes. So I think actually, and of course that discussion hasn't been had about how this one might follow suit or not, but I think that's a good thing. And if people are willing to contribute to the outcomes, maybe even put their own funding up to support the outcomes, then I think that's great. And so I don't think it needs any other test other than if you're willing to support the outcomes of the strategy once it's written and we've all worked on it together, then sign up to it, and that's great. And then hold people accountable to that over time. So I think that's a good discussion to have going forward, but I don't think we need to solve it today. So yeah.
I completely get that, and I totally call what you're saying in some ways. I think I believe you were at that meeting, and one of the things, and all I'm doing is say don't shoot the messenger, but this is what I picked up and expect to actually voice it at this table. But one of the things, and this is what we've got to work on, is the fact is that they see a number, not all of them. I mean, I understand, some of the good work that they do, but one of the issues is that they see catchment groups, some of the catchment groups in some of the areas actually being formed and used to bypass mana whenua. So I'll just leave that there as well, because that's a really important sort of part of this. Thank you.
Just to say, I think we might be moving more into discussion now, but has anyone else got any specific questions for Alex at this point? And then we can... Nope. So thanks, Alex. Is that correct? Yep. So thanks, Alex, and step away, and then we can recommendations up. Now I think what we'll do is have discussion before we do this, because we've got the two names to put in under recommendations 3. So perhaps if we have discussion, and I think we spoke. So okay, Councillor Scott.
Yeah, post your departure, I didn't mean that to be an exacerbator for you at all. It's just that it's there, it's out there, and I'm not putting any pressure on you to try and go and solve anything. I think it's probably more of a governance role to do that. So it's just that's the environment that we're working in at the moment. Things are a bit tight. So that's all I wanted to say, Vicky.
Okay, so Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, thank you. Alex, through your chair, Alex did mention the development of a terms of reference, and presumably after the steering group's been formed. I just wonder if I foreshadow an amendment to number 3 where we might add and develop the terms of reference onto number 3. Can just actually be put on the end, I believe.
Okay. Yep. So just literally as it stands.
Yep. And develop the terms of reference.
Yeah, that sounds fine. Okay, thank you. So any anyone else, any comment? Who'd like to say anything more? I think I know it was a bit of a mix of discussion and question really in the last part. Has anyone got anything burning they'd like to say?
Kia ora, Vicky. Look, I haven't heard from everybody, but I have heard from a few people that have raised an interest in being one of the two councillors. So I've heard that Genevieve is pretty keen, and I've heard that Grant's pretty keen. So I'm happy to put them forward, but happy for others to be put forward as well.
No comment? Okay, so that not seeing or hearing anyone else putting themselves forward. Councillor Swiggs?
I heard potentially Nick Ward wanted to thinking about maybe from your past role as the chair of that committee as well and deputy chair for a while. I'm not sure if that was you wanted to be considered for that, but I heard some conversations relating to that.
Okay. So Nick, I think maybe you could speak for yourself on that one.
Yeah, I'd like to be considered for the position.
Sorry, Claire?
I think probably if I go back to the comments I made this morning and really my concerns around the role of the steering group versus the development of the strategy, and now we've had the clarity around what that looks like, that's fine. But I do have some sympathy for the comments that, or the line of questioning Councillor Mackenzie had earlier on, and I do feel that it would be helpful to have one of the members on this committee, perhaps somebody who's on the ground, particularly in the rural sector, the rural space where a lot of this will happen. It's not going to be exclusively, of course, in rural, it'll be urban as well, but I think that would be just quite nice to get a bit of balance there.
So at the moment we've got Genevieve, Grant, Nick. Anyone else? Joe, you're...
I think Nick may be interested.
Okay, again, Nick's usually quite good at talking for himself. Nick? I said you're usually very capable of speaking up for yourself. Would you like to put your name forward?
Look, after that conversation that was just had, and this sort of thinking about this, I think that there actually needs to be a voice of reason there, and that's me. Particularly around, looking at both sides of it, around mana whenua, but also around the fact is that looking at the paper and then thinking about it and listening to the discussion, I think that we do need to have more of a cross section. So yeah, I'll put my name forward.
Okay, and just to give my sort of sense of things with this, I think one of the really, really valuable things of this particular revitalisation, I think it's acknowledged that the biodiversity strategy we have is actually really excellent and it's done a good job and it's still very relevant. But there are some things that have changed at the national level and as we've heard on the ground locally. And so there's a good reason to revitalise it. And a real opportunity here is that we're revitalising the relationships and building those connections. And I think that's actually as much of a good thing as the actual document that might fall out of it all at the end. And I think the other part of it to think about is that the strategy is the sort of like a guiding document for, there'll be new organisations and new catchment collectives that come up next year and the year after and after that, after this document has to have been completed. The point is that it's providing that vision for how you tap in, how you make sure that what you do on the ground is actually contributing to the outcomes, and collectively we're working, with some sensible sort of guidance. That's what it's really about. So I don't know everybody, you can't have everybody all connected into it in the formation of it, but it's got to be really relevant and useful for people and over the next, several years and decade. So yeah, and I can totally recognise that value in having a sort of a balance of views and people around the table. So into here, and we've got the two places. So we've got 4 names on the out here. So how do we go from there? Have you got a suggestion?
I've got a suggestion. I know there's ways that we can nominate and all that. Maybe a way to do it quickly is if we go around the table and you just say the two people that you would support, and then we add that up and see how we go. I mean, I don't know any other way to do it unless we want to adjourn and try and work it out. But just go around the table and call out the two people's names.
What I'll do. Just pause. I'm just going to
Yeah,
adjourn
adjourn.
for 5 minutes. Yeah. So are we back on? Yes. Back online. Okay, great. Thank you. So can I just, Councillor Mackenzie, could you pop yourself back in your seat? Thanks. So okay. So yeah, I've had a bit of a conversation and totally makes sense having that breadth of connections and knowledge, experience, etc. So I think at this point we're looking at Genevieve, Councillor Robinson, and Councillor Korako. So if there's a general sense that works for people, then we can just put those two names into the recommendation and move forward.
I'd move that, Councillor Southworth.
And Councillor Ward will second. Thank you. Okay, so now we can put forward recommendations. And
So
then
Vicky, happy to move all of that with Councillor Korako and Councillor Robinson inserted into 3, and along with the addition from Councillor Mackay about the terms of reference. So happy to move that, and if Nick's happy, then.
Okay, so we've got and
Should have got to Specsavers.
I don't think we can do brand promotion throughout council meetings. Maybe we could ask for a fee. There we are. Okay. Here we are. Okay, so there's a lot of recommendations there, which I won't read out, but I'm sure you all read them carefully. We've got the 2 names in there, Councillor Robinson, Councillor Korako. They're moved and seconded. We have the amendment around terms of a reference being developed. So can I have all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? No. So that's carried. Thank you. Kia ora. Yay! Okay. So moving on to item 9.1. So these are just reports for information now. We have the Strategy and Policy Committee resolution status report, and we have
me.
Catherine Trott will introduce us.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think there's anything here that's of surprise to you, so unless there are questions, I'll take it as read.
So, any questions on this one? Not seeing anything. No one put their hand up? No. Yes. Oh, sorry, Councillor Edge.
On page 34, at the bottom, it notes that Environment Canterbury will close all 8 climate resilience program shovel-ready projects by 30th of September. Has that now happened?
A report on those will come to the Regional Delivery Committee in November, I believe. So I think the papers were closed off before the end of... But yes, I understand that the report on that's coming back.
My thoughts were that the nature of that report that comes to us, will it include like before and after photographs or statement of income and expenditure? What's the nature of it?
I would have to... Yeah, I'd have to check with the team on that. I know the papers are under development at the moment. I'm looking at Jesse at the back of the room because he's got a better understanding of the state of those papers, but the team's working on it. Yeah.
Okay. So if there's no other questions, then can I have a mover and a seconder for... So Councillor Cranwell and a second, Councillor Mackay. So all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? No, so that's carried, thank you. And then moving on to item 9.2. And so with this one, introducing, I think it's Cecilia back to the table. Thank you, Cecilia. I thought it was, but I didn't want to call you back if it wasn't you. Yeah, so Senior Strategy Advisor, and introduce this on central government consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this report is a regular information item for the Strategy and Policy Committee to update on current government legislative and policy proposals of relevance to Council. Since the last update to the Strategy and Policy Committee in September, there are no submissions on central government consultations that have been provided to report back to the committee. But I do note there are a couple of consultations currently open of relevance to Council, including 2 consultations that, given constrained timeframes, delegated signed out by the Chair has been recommended with councillor feedback to be sought via email. And these consultations will be, submissions will be reported back to the next committee. So those 2 consultations are the Justice Select Committee consultation on the Marine and Coastal Area Act Amendment Bill. And this closes on Tuesday, the 15th, after being introduced to Parliament on the 24th September. And I understand a draft submission was circulated for feedback to the Council yesterday. There's also a DIA consultation on draft regulations to support local authorities to implement changes to the Lagoima Act. This was a change to the Lagoima Act that Council previously submitted in support of. Consultation closes at the end of October, and this draft submission will be circulated to councillors for feedback next week. There's also a consultation on policy proposals for changes to the Biosecurity Act that MPI have opened recently. That closes at the end of November, so staff are working on a proposed approach to bring that to the committee, including a workshop. The table also includes a high-level summary of other consultations expected to be introduced later this year and into 2025. And I also note that councillors recently had a workshop on the resource management reform program to develop that thinking on the 26th of September. So the information in this paper is up to date at the time of writing, recognising that announcements come through, and as those come through, staff will provide updates to the council. Are there any questions on that?
Thanks very much. I was just reading page 38 in the Biosecurity Act submission. I was wondering if it's possible for Councillor Ward to organise some team meetings with the fellow BAG members. We used to have in the last triennium, BAG chairs would come together and just have discussions with staff about some of the biosecurity issues. And I just thought that a bit of a discussion with the BAG members might, raise some issues that maybe a workshop or could be contributing to a workshop, if that was possible.
Okay, I can feed that back to the team working on the approach to the submission, and yeah.
Kia ora anō, Cecilia. Look, I think that we've had a pretty good conversation about this in the initial paper, 8.1, and I actually read over the paper, and what I'm actually talking about is the fact is that the legislative program and then the engagement significance of mana whenua. I think that now looking at the response to the submission to the Takutai Moana paper, actually it does answer all the questions, and really commend you on your staff and whoever wrote the submission. So we can see this as kind of work in progress. My whole thing around the fast track bill was actually ensuring that we had enough kind of resource. If these things actually are going to come at us, because we've had that great conversation over paper 8.1, and my point there was that our strategic plan in this council is our long-term plan, and then once we sign that off, and then it goes across as an operational plan to our staff. And basically from there, you've got, there's budgets and all that in place. But if there's any changes to that, well, that's a tactical change. And so whether you can, and I think with all of this, all these central government legislative program updates and changes, at least under those tactical changes, we may have to actually do that to actually accommodate, for instance, the sustainability of our mana whenua partnerships and things like that. So that's where I was trying to go to, in that paper 8.1. But here now, looking at our strategic policy, this report, completely total court. So thank you anyway. That was a roundabout way of saying, yeah, I get it.
Thank you, and I'd like to acknowledge Alex is behind me in the room here that's leading the development of that draft submission, so thank you.
Just with regards to you referring to the workshop of a couple of weeks ago and a subsequent email, I've just asked for clarification to Catherine Trott before. With regards to the RMA Amendment Bill number 2, it was brought to our attention that there was contemplation of changes to the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement or the likes with regards to the marine area. And through, seeking further information, I cannot see that within any documentation that could put us on alert, online or with government or anything that I can see. So I just wanted to seek clarification if you've heard anything otherwise, and it should be mentioned in here, because it kind of is quite important with the upcoming work on the planning process.
Genevieve, I might just address that. I've come back, I've had one answer that the planning team's not aware of anything. I'm just going back and checking now through Olivia whether she's heard anything. So we will get you an answer to that, but I just haven't got it.
Thank you. I think that's all questions. So, Cecilia, thank you, and you step back from the table. Thank you. Councillor Pauling, I think you've foreshadowed an amendment to the recommendation on this one. It's been amended up there. Got you. So it's been picked up. Lovely. Okay, so you can see that there's a few points in there that have been lifted. That this is advice come back from staff to amend this recommendation that came in the paper. So, do I have a mover and a mover for that? Councillor Robinson, seconder. Councillor Davies. And so, have we got any discussion? Anyone want to make any comments? Or Councillor Robinson?
Thank you for this, and I think it's really important the ones you've identified for submissions, and the best possible input we can have now will be beneficial in the long term. I do also want to comment of some of the other ones that we've missed out on, like the critical minerals list that we're not submitting on, and the Crown Minerals Amendment Bill, of which we didn't submit on either. I think they could have been addressed even with a 4-day turnaround. But yeah, subsequently, maybe just, I just wanted a precautionary approach that we need to know these things like this ahead of time if possible. And even if there's a short turnaround that we're at least alerted to it and the possibility of doing our own one, of which I've done recently. Thank you, Catherine, for that too. So cheers.
Okay. So and we do have the sort of outline principles of how we decide, bearing in mind that there's a certain amount of staff capacity, and I think that's an important factor that is also in there. But yeah, appreciate it is good to know as councillors when there isn't going to be a organisational submission that we can put our own in, knowing that we're not sort of going to conflict in any way with what's going in as a council. So it's helpful to be informed of that as well. Thank you. We've got a mover and a seconder. So I'll put the motion. Is there? Can all those in favour say aye? Aye. Any against? No one. So that's carried. Thank you. So then, moving into item 9.3. So this is a chair's report. There's been a few things that we've done over the last month thereabouts, which was just useful to have somewhere to sort of put it so it's visible to the public, and also to acknowledge that because now our briefings are, or many of our briefings are now in the public domain, there is actually a mechanism for the public to request workshop presentations, for example. Those are available on request. So I think it's really important that people know that. And so this outlines some of the things that we've had briefings on and discussions about. And so that's all captured there. So I also think it's important that councillors can speak to these things. Particularly, we had the workshop on the resource management reform. There's an awful lot of reform that's being signalled. And so we had a workshop on that. We had staff put together a sort of outline of shifts and trends that are being seen. And we workshopped on what our sort of principles and how we were going to, principles and the priorities that we would put together for submissions and things that we are supportive of that are coming through, signals from government and things that we're concerned about. So those things are all were discussed in there. I think the paper really, it's the information's there for the reading, and but I'll open up now for councillors to, if anybody else would like to speak to any particular item on the paper. Councillor Pauling.
Just want to acknowledge, I know, Joe, you've been doing a lot of work on the regional public transport plan consultation. Just want to acknowledge that work, and I know there's a lot of meetings going on, so thank you for that. Likewise with Councillor Mackenzie, I know you've done a lot of work, and other councillors have attended too, but you've done the main grunt work on the gravel management strategy, so just wanted to acknowledge you for that. And Vicky, in terms of the letter that went to the Minister of Transport, I know you were really key in making us push for that, and great to see the letter finally go off, and with the Mayor's signing it off as well. So just want to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Mackenzie.
Look, thank you, Craig, for that recognition. Yayan and David East and Nick, I think, attended all the gravel hui. Dion, I should say. I guess what I was just going to say is that I think there are two parts to where we got to, and the next two meetings are with primarily with commercial aggregate operators, and I think the message we want to convey to that is the consensus, sort of pretty much the consensus of where the gravel hui's got to, which is that there isn't an issue with taking gravel for river management for flood capacity, but there is an issue with taking, but that's limited to the capacity of the river to supply that shingle in the first place. And in South Canterbury in particular, there isn't much aggregate available to be taken. It needed to be taken for flood capacity. And I think part of the message and why one of the meetings is going to be held in Timaru is to reinforce the difference between areas where there is shingle to be taken for flood protection and those where there isn't. And the difference between a gravel authorisation, which is a fast-track, simple approach which the river engineering team wants to use as a method of encouraging abstractors to go to the parts of the river where we want the shingle taken from, and then the requirement to have a consent, which in general terms is where the volumes of shingle, where the taking of the shingle is more contentious. And what we'd like to do is, and what was proposed, especially in the Timaru gravel hui, was if we can get Runanga and Fish and Game and those interested parties who've been involved in the authorisations and consents to accept river engineers' plans for where there is shingle available, and these are the protocols under which you can take it, and accept that, then they don't have to be involved in the individual authorisations, which will then speed up the process and take some of the work off, especially Runanga's tables. So that's part of what we're working on. So the next two huis will be about talking to the commercial operators about this is where we'd like to go, and then it's also the code of practice, making sure that they understand the reasons for the code of practice and how we're going to force compliance on them, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Councillor Davies, you want to talk to the...
Yeah, I mean, it's going well, the consultation period. Been to about 5 events. I think I've got about 5-10 to go. I think we're at around 300 submissions, which is a good kind of innings. And, you know, being at the interchange, one thing that does kind of resonate a message is just how important the service is to people. And I think we should always remind ourselves of this. It's just talking to people, like people, it's their livelihood being able to use our buses. And I'd just like to commend the work of the officers, particularly Len Fleet, Luana and Stephanie. The comms team have been fantastic, really engaging, and they've been a pleasure to work with.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, so we've got recommendations coming up. Can I have a... Here we go. So I have a mover, Councillor Ward, seconder, Councillor Mackenzie. So any discussion? Well, we've had discussion. That's been... Oh, Councillor Edge, you still got something to
Sorry,
say?
just to pick up on your comment about the public transport investment and the letters to the minister.
Oh, yeah.
The sort of the GPS is out. Lack of funding for public transport generally. We had a meeting through the Mayoral Forum with Simon Bridges, the CEO, on Friday last week, explaining the situation, but effectively the money that's available for public transport is pretty much fixed. There's no sort of additional money for public transport, and the NZTA are required to basically, or expected to deliver on the expectations of the GPS put forward by the minister. So those things are being worked through, and we have a discussion this afternoon, and I think tomorrow as well, from the PT team about the situation and how that might impact on our long-term plan.
On the annual plan.
And future work as well.
Thank you. Yep. Lovely. Well, I think on that note, we'll all those who are in favour of the recommendations on the screen, please say aye. Any against? No. So that's carried. Thank you. Now we've got PX. Oh, we've not got a PX. PX is just on the calendar. It's not. I was thinking. Right, great. So in that case, then we just a note of when the next meeting is. So that's on the 6th of November, and that'll get publicly advertised. So and then Yayan, you closing for us?
The voice of reason closed today.
I believe that's you, Councillor Korako.
E mihi atu kia koutou o ka rakatira o te tepu. Ko tēnei karakia whakamutuka. Kia tau kia tātou ki tō tātou whai o tō tātou ariki karaiti me tāroha tātou me te whiwhina teitanga ki te wairua tapu. Ake tōna atu. Amen.
Lovely. Thank you. That's meeting closed. Thank you very much.